Welcome back to the Vis X Show podcast. I am Vis, your barefoot host, and here we're going to talk a little bit about life through the perspective of a barefoot nonconformist with a Gen X tilt. Today, it's story time. I listened to the Chris Sacca, Tim Ferriss interview from last week, and man, was it good. One of the themes that I really honed in on was Chris Sacca talking about how a lot of this younger generation, millennials, Zoomers, they have lost the ability to tell stories. And he goes on to relate that to how it's difficult for them to sell themselves or sell something else. And he draws it back to the stories that many of us Gen Xers have as kids, where we were getting into trouble. In his words, doing a flim flam or pulling a con or doing non-felonious activities that we might consider type 2 or type 3 fun. So it really got me thinking. There's a song, and the lyrics have always resonated with me, and the part of the lyrics that resonate say, 100 bad days made 100 good stories. 100 good stories makes me interesting at parties. Every time I hear those lyrics, I think, man, I am that guy. I'm the guy with all of the stories. So today, I'm going to tell you a little story that is sort of the precursor to Barefoot in the Badlands, which I talked about a little bit in episode 1. As you know, I'm a nonconformist, and so back in 1998, I decided not to continue my college education. I had been at university for one semester and made the most of it, if the most of it is having a good time with your friends. And so what I decided near the end of that semester was that I wanted to take a semester off and do some traveling. Travel I did. Spring break that year, so it would have been March of 1998, I got in my truck to travel around the United States. I had no plan for where all I would go. I had no plan for how long I would go. But I had prepared my truck for sleeping in the back with a camper shell, and I had a road atlas. This was before GPS was mainstream, certainly before I had any cell phone or most people had cell phones. And so I took my road atlas, some food, and a cot mattress, and I got on the road. So today's story is about the very first experience I had where I really learned a deep lesson about life, about how we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and about how maybe I'm living on borrowed time, and how each new day is a gift. So let me set this up. It was cold in Arizona. I had spent the previous night camping in Canyon de Chelly. I woke up in the morning and it was -4 degrees, and so that's not 4 degrees below zero for my international Celsius friends. That is 26 degrees or 28 degrees below freezing in Fahrenheit. So very, very cold. I woke up freezing cold, had to turn the truck on and let it heat just long enough to get my water to melt so that I could then pour it into a bowl and heat that up and have some oatmeal for breakfast. So I was cold. Stayed the night in Canyon de Chelly, had a little bit of a hair-raising hike across some icy rock faces leading into that night. So that sets up, I get up in the morning. Canyon de Chelly is in Arizona. It's in the northeast part of Arizona, just south of Four Corners, USA. And I got up that morning and decided, you know where would be really cool to go? Tombstone. This was not too long after the Tombstone movie had been really big, and so it was a place that sounded really neat. Like if I'm going to get on a road trip and just drive around wherever I want, I'm going to go to Tombstone. And so I got out my road atlas that morning after eating my oatmeal, and I mapped out a trek to get down there. And the road that I went on went south along Arizona's eastern side through the White Mountains and then comes out in the south of Arizona near Tombstone. And that was my plan. As the day got on, I was traveling along in my pickup truck, and it was sunny outside, and being the 19-year-old kid, young man that I was, that cared a lot about things like having a suntan or maybe having a lack of tan lines, I rolled my window down and I took my shirt off and I took my seatbelt off to make sure I didn't have a tan line running across me from getting some good old Arizona sun in March. So I'm going south and I'm getting into the mountains just a little bit, and I see snow everywhere. And you have to understand, I'm not from an area where there's a lot of snow. I'm not from an area where there's mountains. And so I was a little cautious about what was about to happen. It was a Tuesday. I remember that specifically because I came across a road sign that I wouldn't have even considered prior to this day. This road sign said that the roads in the mountains would be cleared if it were a weekday and if it were not currently snowing. And so I thought to myself, it's Tuesday. We'll check this off. It's Tuesday. It's sunny outside. We're good. So I continue on my way with all the confidence in the world that I'm just going to stay on the road, go through the mountains, and have a good old time and end up in Tombstone camping for the night once more. It's not exactly what happened. About a couple hours into the mountains and probably about an hour from the last part of humanity that I had seen, any scrap of an Airbnb or a town was way behind me. I had no idea how much farther in the mountains I would have to go to get to the other side. Didn't really care. I mean, time was not something that mattered very much back before cell phones and all of the things and GPS. So I wasn't trying to prove anything, wasn't going fast. And I was up probably near a pass in the White Mountains. It was above the tree line. And you could see on the outside edges of all of the roads were large snowbanks where snow had built up and gotten moved off. And so one of these, I'm coming around an outside corner and I feel my back end fishtail just a little bit. And I had a split second opportunity to decide, do I try and make the turn and end up rolling down a mountain, or do I just go straight off and take my chances? Somehow in that moment, I decided to go straight off. All I could see in front of me was just like a snowbank. And then across the valley, you could see trees from the mountains in the distance. All the trees near me were down on the mountain side. I was not too far above the tree line, but a little bit. And so I plunge off the side of the mountain. Wasn't going fast. I mean, it was mountain roads, winding, and I go off. And then what happens is I suddenly stop. I jerk to a stop, take a breath, kind of look around, look at my truck, all the things that were on my seat, all my CDs and all my snacks are all on the floor. I look down. I've got my shin had hit a little something underneath my dash, was bleeding a little bit, and I'm hanging down, looking down the mountain at the trees. The trees at this point are about 10 feet in front of my pickup truck. What happened was, as my truck careened off the road, hit the snowbank and compacted enough snow going down the mountain to stop about 10 feet before I hit the trees. So as I'm surveying everything that's going on inside my cab, I turn the truck off and I think to myself, well, I need to get in the back of the truck and get my warm winter suit on and my coveralls and get up and try and see what the damage is. And first thing I did was unbuckle my seatbelt, which, if you remember, I hadn't been wearing. To this day, I don't remember putting my seatbelt on. I just have to trust that was something that God or a guardian angel did for me to keep me from coming to a stop and going through my windshield into the trees on the side of a mountain. So I get off, I get out of the pickup truck and realize that, my truck is at such a steep angle that even able to get in the back of my pickup truck to get my coveralls and supplies to get bundled up so that I can get up to the road, I have to use the side of my truck as handholds just to get into the back. There were ice bubbles that I was having to crawl over in order to get up to the road. So I get all covered up and I get up to the road and I look around and there's nobody. I hadn't seen any vehicles in a long time. And because I didn't know where I was exactly, I didn't know how far to the other side of the mountains, all I knew was that it had been an hour, 2 hours since I had seen any real civilization. And so I decide to start walking the direction that I had been driving. I figure it's as good of opportunity as any to find somebody to get some help. And so I'm walking that way for a while and it's getting more and more snowy at this point. The sun is no longer out. It's snowing on me. And the first car that comes is coming towards me, and they very, very fortunate. They stopped and they asked what's going on. I told them that my truck had driven off the side of the mountain and that I need to try and find a way to get to a telephone where I can call a tow service maybe and come get my truck and see what the rest of the damage is. They let me know that the direction I'm going is the farthest way to get to any civilization, and so they're kind enough to put me in the vehicle, and they take me about an hour back the direction I'd come to a little Airbnb that has a phone. And so I go there and I call the next closest town, which is still 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour farther back the direction I had come, and I call the local towing service. At this point, it's really snowing outside, and the tow driver, he talks to me and he says that he's gonna come out and he'll take a look. He knows exactly where it is. Evidently, it's a particular turn that especially motorcyclists, but a lot of drivers go off at all times of year. So he's familiar with the area. He picks me up and we go out there, and he looks at it and he's like, man, I don't know. This is going to be tough. He's in his 4-wheel drive pickup tow truck, and it's because it's snowing outside, which is a smaller vehicle than his 2-wheel drive truck that's back at the shop. He tells me he's not sure if he's going to be able to get it pulled up or not. And so he hooks onto it. He puts out some flares and he has me holding a flashlight just in case there's oncoming traffic. And so I'm out there monitoring the roads and the traffic, and he's down hooking up to the truck and working on trying to get my vehicle free. And suddenly I decided, I was like, I want to turn back and see how things are going. And I turn back and I see this tow truck. It's connected over here to my truck that's down the hill, and the front is like this. Like the front of the pickup truck was totally levered all the way up, and it's like I was terrified. I couldn't believe this guy was doing this to his truck, pulling that hard on my pickup truck. And so finally he comes back up and he tells me, he says, this is not something he's going to be able to do in this truck. And so he's willing to take me back into town, and he tells me that there's a motel that's right next to his shop that I can stay at for the night. And if the weather clears, then the next morning after the roads are clear, we can get out there in his bigger truck and maybe get my vehicle pulled up. So that night we get back, I stay in the hotel, and I stay in the only hotel I've ever been in that did not have a telephone in the room. You might imagine that after a near-death, harrowing experience in what turned out to be a blizzard, I'd want to talk to somebody that I knew. I'll be honest. Mostly I wanted to call my mom. And not really tell her all of the details, but I wanted to just hear a friendly voice. I wanted to just know that my mom was okay, let her know that I was okay, that I was alive, and I didn't get to. So I got to spend that entire night reliving over and over, driving over the side of a mountain and thinking through all the scenarios that could have happened, worst scenarios that could have happened. If I had gone sideways and rolled, or if I had gotten thrown from my vehicle, or who knows what could have happened. It was truly miraculous that I was alive, and I was just really, really thankful. And so when I woke up the next morning, it was sunny outside, and I was able to go to a fast food place and grab some breakfast and show up at the mechanic shop where the tower had his vehicles. And he waited around for a couple hours for things to warm up a little bit, for the sun to get out, and for him to be able to make some calls to know that the road was clear. And he took me back out there. We had a good chat along the way, and he loved that I was just a young guy that was out trying to see the world, and he knew that I didn't really have any money. So we get to my pickup truck, and he hooks up to it, and his bigger truck has a hard time, but he does get it up. And come to find out, the truck had busted some ice bubbles that form in the springtime underneath these snowbanks, and was kind of caught in kind of like an ice bubble that it had broken into. And so he had to kind of do some digging, but finally got my pickup out. So then we start to survey the damage, and lo and behold, there was no actual damage to my truck. What he found upon inspection was that the truck was at such a steep angle pointing down the hill that all of the transmission fluid had actually leaked out of the check tube. And so he filled me up, and all he charged me for was for the initial trip and enough gas for the second trip, and sent me on my way. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Where did I go after that? Not Tombstone. I ended up taking a side route and going straight to Phoenix because I knew I had a friend there and I did not want to be alone another day. Shout out to my buddy Steve, who he and his parents were so kind to bring me into their home and give me some of the warmth, some of the human connection that I so needed after a life and death situation. But ever since that day, I knew that I was alive because there's more that I have to accomplish. Not by accident. I didn't survive it by accident. I'm very, very confident in that. And so I knew that there's more to do. So people who know me think I'm passionate about certain things. I'm passionate about raising children well. I'm passionate about making a world for our children and making the world a better place for humanity. And I can tell you that it's not on accident that I feel strongly about those things. It's because I recognize every day that I have the day in front of me only because I've survived. I don't think it's a coincidence. And so that's a day that changed my life trajectory. It changed my entire outlook on life, on death, on what it means to live. Similarly, when I get out of the bed each morning, first thing I feel is the floor underneath my feet. If I'm at home, it's a warm carpet. If I'm in a hotel or visiting a guest, sometimes initially I feel a cool floor on my feet. It feels alive, vibrant, because I know that my feet can feel the floor, and I know at that time that I'm connected, I'm rooted in a new day. I have a new day. Some of those days I'll do more with than I will with others. The same is true if you walk barefoot. If you take your feet out of the shoes that protect from all of the risk on the ground, then you get an increased sense of risk for your feet, for what you might step on, what you might come across. But at the same time, you're more present in the moment as you feel the different textures on the ground. You feel the rocks, you feel the soft, cool grass, you feel the difference in temperatures that help you know you're more connected to the world around you, that help you know that you're alive. And just like in life, we've got to take the shoes off of our lives, those shoes that just protect us, but also keep us from experiencing the fullness of life. I love being barefoot. I love how it colors the way I see the world. More importantly, I love you guys for watching, and I look forward to a little bit of story time in the next episode. Let me know, do you go barefoot often? What's it like? Does it make you feel alive? If you take your shoes off right now, will you think about it differently? Tell me, have you had an experience that absolutely drastically changed your life? I really want to know. Hit me up on the socials, hit me up in the comments, wherever you're watching this. I'd really like to know, how's life for you? Are you living on borrowed time? Are you living like it? We'll see you next time.